we applied a long, long lost, totally dead, 3,000 plus year old, probably older than that, early Pythagorean, ancient Egyptian methodology to figuring out things called retroduction? There's only like an article and a half on this in the entire world. I'll be writing a book on it eventually in the future. But what if we actually apply hardcore Pythagorean and Platonic retroduction to explaining light? Now, from the premise of the simplex mind, obviously light exists, right? But then we have to define, is light a thing in and of itself? If we only knew about Bob or could define Bob when he was walking or he's moving something, or let's say Bob cut a fart, right? we only then could say something about Bob. Now, by the way, the four Maxwellian field equations never define a field in principle, i.e. a field in itself, of itself, by itself. Maxwellian field equations only define field modalities, whether that be magnetic, electric, dielectric, of a vector over a period of time with resultant effect. No branch of science has ever, at any point in time, defined a field. By the way, if you ever really want to piss off a scientist or a physicist, the only thing you have to do is you need to ask them something really simple like a child, because they will have a brain fart. They'll either get pissed or walk away, or they will try to blow smoke up your skirt. Just ask them, say, "Excuse me, Mr. Scientist, Mr. Know-it-all asshole. Could I ask you a question about light?" "Sure, I know everything about light. I am a tenured professor of physics or astrophysics," whatever the case might be. Astrophysicists are the really good one, because these people are always looking at light, but they don't know what light is. Say, "Excuse me, since light slows down by about 17% depending on the frequency of light, because the higher the frequency, the more the capacitance and the more it slows down. This is why blue light slows down more in glass, for example, than does red light. Excuse me, without breaking the law of conservation of energy, how is it the case, and this is irrefutable, every scientist on earth will accept this fact, light slows down about 17% as it goes through glass, but as it leaves glass, it, quote, speeds back up to its original speed. This is a fact. Now, without breaking, Mr. Scientist, Mr. Know-it-all asshole, without breaking the law of, because it's not like a light is not like a car. It like hits a speed bump, and then you slow down and you hit the gas again to speed back up, because there's no gas inside. By the way, this all proves the ether, by the way. Anybody that thinks they can disprove the ether is a moron, and I will destroy them in any debate on field theory. Without breaking the law of the conservation of energy, how can light speed back up again? By the way, light has no speed. It's a rate of induction. There's no such thing as a quote-unquote speed of light. It's a rate of induction. Everything in the universe is electrical. Specifically, it's dielectric and magnetic. Okay. Without breaking the law of the conservation of energy, how can light speed back up again? Because it has no energy by which to, speed back up. They will never have an answer for you. That will stump them. I will give anybody out there $1 million. I don't have $1 million. If you can find a scientist that will answer that question without blowing some smoke up your butt, because they will never have an answer. Have them write out the answer for you and then submit that answer to me, because no one has an answer for that. And it's okay not to know. What really pisses me off, however, are all the a-hole scientists out there that pretend to know and tell everybody else that they know stuff when in fact they don't really know stuff. Okay, so let's apply hardcore Pythagorean and hardcore Platonic, Neoplatonic retroductive logic to the nature of light. Now, light is a phenomenon. First, let's start off by saying something really simple, okay? A wave is not what something, wrap your brain around this. It's really simple, but the really simple stuff is what confuses people. A wave is not what something is. A wave is something to, look, that's a wave. It's like, no, that's my hand moving. Okay, now let's apply that to light. So this is my hand moving. Yeah, this is waving. No, this is my hand moving spatially with X frequency, right? Say this is like 2 hertz, 5 hertz. 10 hertz. I can't flap my hand that fast. Okay, so let's use this and apply it to light. If this were light, okay, and light were to stop waving, remember, a wave is not what something is, a wave is what something does. If light were to stop waving, i.e. linear or circular polarization, transverse electrical magnetic, light would cease to be. Now, this is like me saying if my hand stops waving, remember, a wave is what something does, not what something is. So my hand stops waving, but there's no hand. Okay, because that's exactly what light happens to light. Okay, we only define light by its attribute. That would be like only defining Bob by Bob walking or cutting a fart or like eating sand. It's like Bob is always an invisible creature, but if he starts walking or eating, we can actually observe Bob. Bob has a frequency, and he traveled X distance with X effect. He pushed the garbage can out to the curb. He expelled, 10 joules of energy. That's great, but that doesn't tell you anything about Bob himself. If Bob can only be defined by attributes, activity, or in the case of light, waving, that means that light doesn't exist. Let's just take this a little bit further. Light is only defined by what it does, and specifically only as its loss of inertia, because light is a coaxial circuit. It has transverse electrical magnetic, whether it's linear polarization, circular polarization, longitudinal rarefactions and compressions. This is where the absurd notion that asshole scientists came up with a photon, this notion of a light particle, which has no basis in reality, is not the output of any experiment ever done, ever. There's no such thing as a light particle. This bullshit was an arbitrary concept. Okay, no basis in reality, none whatsoever. Okay, light's a coaxial circuit. You know what a coax is? You know anything about coax cable? Go look up a diagram of coax cable. So if light's only defined by what it does, and specifically only as loss of inertia, that which exists as a longitudinal coaxial circuit, light therefore must not exist. Well, of course, we're not denying the fact that light as a phenomena exists, but light is nothing other than a complex field perturbation, just like electricity, magnetism, and dielectricity, or in this case electrostatics or lightning. Okay, absent its action, it ceases to be, right? It's like, well, this is my hand and this is my hand waving. What about light? If light ceases to illuminate, which would be the attributional side of light, then light ceases to be. Well, it's like, well, light one thing, illumination another. Well, there's no such thing as light. Now, we know that illumination exists, but this is a field complex, field modality phenomena. But light itself does not exist, because if light ceases to do what it does, then light has no basis in reality. We only not know light by illumination. And since we only know light by illumination, therefore we can say that the phenomena of illumination exists, but the noun that we call light does not exist. Light does not move. Nothing emits light. Everything is a field perturbation. Now, would you say that a person in the middle of a pond, okay, a little bitty pond, and they're right in the middle and they're flapping their arms and waves are being generated? By the way, waves don't move. They actually go up and down like pistons. This causes a perturbation in the next region of the water and the next. Waves don't actually move this way. They do on the ocean, but that's due to the sloping current of the seashore. That's a lot more complex. But in the case of a pond, we say we have an even distance. And waves don't move this way. They actually propagate. One actually initiates another. Just like pistons in your car. Pistons in your car don't do this number. They do this number. Okay? Don't take the analogy too far. So a person in the middle of a pond does not actually reach the outside of the edge of the pond, right, where the waves are lapping at your feet? No. What happens is a field perturbation occurs. The release of energy releases X frequency of light with X or Y intensity. Okay? So absent its action, light ceases to be. Therefore, light doesn't exist. If light does not exist in principle, but only in attribute, therefore we can say illumination exists, but not light itself. Therefore, we can say that light in itself, by itself, has no noun. It has no principality. It is not a subject. Just like a shadow is not a thing. A shadow is not a thing. A shadow is a privation of light. Therefore, only illumination exists. Light itself does not exist. Simplex, hardcore, retroductive, Platonic, or Pythagorean, doesn't matter which one. It's all the same stuff. Logic applied to the nature of light. Light does not exist, only illumination. If principle is subject to action only, without said verb, i.e. waving, then the noun itself of light therefore cannot exist. Nobody can or should ever speak about waves. Waves don't exist, nor does light. Waving is a verb performed by a noun. But in the case of light, we actually have waves of something that doesn't exist. Therefore, light is nothing other than a coaxial circuit, a complex field modality, an ether perturbation. In this case, a complex ether perturbation. Simplex Platonic logic says that this is absolutely de facto irrefutably the case. Light, that which we call light, does not exist. It's irrefutable from the premise of Platonic logic. Illumination does exist, but illumination is a field perturbation. All visible light rests at the nexus point, or axis of the electromagnetic spectrum between its division of the ratio of 1 to 5, but I need to discuss that in another video. That's a lot more complex and deep subject. Light does not wave itself. Light doesn't exist. Therefore, we call illumination the wave or the phenomena of the field perturbation. I mean, we know that a wave is not a thing, but what something does. But in the case of light, light does not exist. Only illumination exists, and we speak of illumination is synonymous with the wave. Illumination is X frequency. That frequency is the wave. Therefore, wave and illumination are the same thing. So if light doesn't exist and only the waving exists, and waving is absolutely 100% irrefutably synonymous with illumination at X frequency, then we can say that light does not exist, and it doesn't exist. Given these facts, we can abduce, this is abduction. Light does not exist. What we call the speed of light is the maximum rate of propagation of the medium itself, i.e. the ether or inertia, the original meaning of inertia, not our current connotation of inertia, as a transverse coaxial circuit of a field perturbation. Light neither travels nor can anything emit light by definition. Nothing emits light, it sets up a field perturbation. Nothing ever emits light. That's an absurdity. Light exists nowhere unless resistance is met. The complete darkness of space surrounding the sun, for example, is devoid of light. Its manifestation by proxy only occurs when a mass, i.e. this is all my words too, I'm not quoting from somebody else, this is all stuff I wrote out. Perturbation or disruption occurs. This sets up a loss of inertia, which defines what ignorant human beings conventionally call light. But light itself certainly does not exist, only illumination, but illumination is 100% undeniably, irrefutably synonymous with a wave. Illumination, a wave at X frequency. Therefore, light is not a thing of itself by itself, but a complex field modality. A simplex field modality would be electricity, not electricity, actually dielectricity and magnetism. Gravity doesn't exist. Gravity is just simplex dielectric acceleration. What human beings call light is only the disruption of light by matter, the release or loss of inertia or energy. Not light itself, which is a massless inertia, well, in this case, the principle. It would be unmanifest. This would be counter space, or the pure potential or pure energy of counter space. Before anything, it's like what's the sound of one hand clapping, like an old Chinese kongan. However, I don't want to get into stupid religious nonsense. Light does not exist. The phenomenon, what we should call light, is a coaxial longitudinal inertia perturbation which does not move nor has a speed. Its so-called speed is a native permeability and permittivity of the ether itself. Like I said, light is not a speed, it's a rate of induction through the medium, the rate of induction of the perturbation of said medium, as against itself, i.e. the ether perturbation. Nobody ever sees light. The only thing they see is the resistance to the inertia perturbation, which we call light, but really is illumination. Light has no basis in reality, only illumination. Resistance equals manifestation. Resistance is the loss of inertia. When we talk about resistance, we talk about volume. Light has volume, X frequency. We have anything that has transverse components has volume. And this volume, of course, is the frequency and the volume of light. In the case of energy, however, the smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. In the case of blue light, however, for example, which the more you go towards the blue end of the spectrum, the more powerful the light gets. This is a simplex mathematical equation, by the way. E equals nu V, which means basically blue end light is a lot more powerful, which has a smaller spatial variant. In the opposite case of conventional premise, something that's larger has more, can hold more stuff. Inverse to that, in electrical, in the nature of electricity and the field phenomena, when we talk about dielectricity and electricity, the smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. Space is only relational to magnetism. Space is not a thing of itself. It has no properties. Space is literally the posterior attribute of the loss of inertia as manifested through magnetism. So, there we have it. In really, really simple, I could actually go on about this for hours, but you all would go... Let me know if you want me to go on about this subject, because I could go on in greater depth. We could go way down the rabbit hole and then learn all the stuff that your stupid teachers and professors are clueless retards about. By the way, everything I just read there is stuff I wrote. I'm not quoting from somebody else. You feel me, You feel me, girlfriend? Okay, I didn't want you to think I was quoting somebody else, quoting myself. Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, you can make a donation. You tell me to jump off a cliff. Whatever makes you happy.